Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Theory Crafting Thursday. Just to get a few things out of the way first, I posted a comment, a pinned comment in my last week's video on threshold training that summarizes some discussion that was in the comments or on Discord. So it's all in one place. So I want to highlight that discussion and stuff, and I'd like to do that through community posts eventually, but I'm like 30-40 subscribers away from that, so it would be nice if people could subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about analyzing intuition. Tetris very intuition heavy, visual thinking game. And so I'm going to put forth the framework around these two concepts of habit and processing power, or PP for short. So first, with some loosely applied psychology background again, we got System 1 and System 2, two thinking systems in the brain. It's kind of a meme in the community ever since Scarborough talked about it. I don't know if the people watching this video know about that, but it was just a thing. But so System 1 is going to be your fast brain, unconscious thoughts. This is generally, the intuition, or most of the thinking in Tetris is going to be under System 1. Very visual and feeling based, as compared to System 2, which is slower brain, or generally makes decisions more slowly. It's associated with conscious thought because language and critical thinking are going to be under System 2. So whenever I think most people think with words. I mean, there's a category of people that don't do that. So we don't really make a lot of conscious decisions while we're playing the game, like in the middle of play, when you do analysis, obviously you do, but when you do, it's one of the definitions for macro or just decision making. I think is a more general term, but that's the most recent definition that Nimoy has said, the big macro guy, about what macro is. I'm not going to get too far into that. It's just a little note. So we're going to talk about my intuition analysis theory. So the first concept, processing power, it's just going to general concept for your ability to process the queue and the stack and spit out placement. So this can include how quickly you can do it, or how many patterns you're churning through as you go. But we'll just talk about it first, and it'll make more sense. So the underlying theory are going to be these two things, pattern recognition, pattern resolution. I talked about them briefly in the stacking video, but I think for the level that video is targeted at, it's basically just an info dump. This is just going to be a low-level description of how people even play this game, right, while looking at the queue. It's not like you're placing all the pieces in your head at once, because we're not like robots. So first is the pattern recognition phase, where you look at the stack and you break it into different surfaces that you need to fill in. So if I'm trying to make a T-spin, I'm going to preserve this T-shape here, and I want to fill in this 3 side with an overhang, and fill in this 3 with just another 6 blocks. So on this stack, I see something like a JZ. I could even do an LZ with taking into this, but there's a billion other different ways I could fill this in. But I'm not looking at Q, right? I'm just looking at this stack, and I'm looking at different ways I could do this. I could fill it in. Next, different ways I could fill in the 3 side with the overhang. Not looking at stack, just thinking of ways I can make this overhang. That's the pattern recognition phase. Then pattern resolution, I actually look at the queue and I fit the queue into these patterns, and I decide which one I think looks the best. I don't know about you, but for me, I think these two are probably going to be the cleanest and the nicest. So that ends up in this T-spin. So that's how, at least I personally think how to break down a high-level Tetris decision making, right? It's not real. It is impressive that you're looking through all the pattern recognition, but it's definitely a lot more about patterns than it is about iterating through the previews. For people, at least, because we're actually, comparatively to bots, we're 0.001% of their processing power. But this is how humans, make up for it. So I think that super low level description, it's like barely applicable. But why do I think that this is important to talk about? It's because I think it combines the ideas of efficiency and speed. So I mean, speed is just speed, like how quickly you're going through this loop, right? How many pieces you're putting down per second, PPS. But there's actually like underneath this concept as well is going to be the depth of processing, right? So that's how many of these patterns you're considering, how many different arrangements of the patterns you're considering, and like sorting through to find out the actual best placement. And that's what I'm going to be calling depth. So when you increase your speed, your depth is going to go down. Or like the depth you can do is going to go down, obviously, because you just have less time to go through all the patterns. So if depth is too low because you're going too fast, then you're gonna do pretty bad, right? You're gonna play pretty badly, like you're just striding. And if its speed is too low, it doesn't really matter how many like patterns you're going through. If you can't place the pieces, your opponent's just gonna kill you. So there's like some peak of speed and performance, and that's gonna be generally your comfort zone, right? That's the good balance of speed and efficiency. But when people improve, I think they generally try to think that there's like a best way to do it. Like, I think we should all push speed. I think we should push efficiency first and then get faster. But I think is that it's basically the same, right? You're doing the same thing. You're just improving your ability to like evaluate a pattern or evaluate a solution with the patterns that you're recognizing. So either way, what you want to do is go to the edges of your comfort zone and just try and raise that level up. So you're trying to go from this blue curve to the red curve just by going to the edge of the comfort zone, trying to raise that skill by practicing there and comparing it to your performance at your actual comfort zone. So this is sort of related to like threshold training. It's just like setting a threshold of your comfort zone instead of just trying to like aim for here, right? Like aim for the sky, right? But eventually you'll slowly push up your performance. This is a pretty badly drawn graph. That's my bad. But yeah, regardless, you're pushing up the curve. It's not anything about like I'm pushing my maximum speed and I'm pushing my maximum efficiency. They're related, right? And I think that isn't clear enough to a lot of people. So that's what I think processing power is useful for. Second part is your habits, or the habits and heuristics that your intuition has. So heuristics is just going to be like at a glance, preferring some placements over others, or preferring some board states over others. I mean, there's reasons behind why, but like your intuition isn't thinking about that at all. Like when I see these stacks, I like this side better than I like this side. I mean, I can tell you the reasoning behind it. Like this one, I like to slope towards the wall because it makes it easier to fill in the whole stack when I'm trying to like stack for a T-spin or like down stack. And this is just results in a worse height difference or like a less T-spinnable stack than this one. So that's heuristics. Second is the pattern composition, or like the actual like quantity of pattern libraries that you have, or like which patterns like you have access to on certain stacks. But yeah, so it's just like examples of larger patterns, this LZ. I just tried to come up with one that wasn't just this JZ because this is like the my best example for this. But yeah, so not only is it just like bigger patterns, but you can also like combine existing patterns into newer ones. So like if you know that this Z overhang exists and you know that this J fits on this stack, then you can come up with this JZ pattern, which it's called the chip tooth. That's what I call it. So yeah, obviously you'll also improve this just by playing more. Same with processing power, but it's also something that I think you can start to consciously identifying the heuristics that can be better, and also the different patterns that you might be missing. And not only are there like good habits, like understanding this, but also like bad habits, like which patterns you tend to like over attach to, or which patterns you tend to miss, like if you just don't have them. There's also like at certain game states, you'll make a mistake. Um, in a certain mental state, like if you're tired or like tilted, you'll make a certain kind of mistake more. So like if you're tilted, you should try and like identify like and focus on the habit that you tend to make the most mistake on to like make up for that. That's what the big concept here is, right? So we're trying to identify the patterns within the mistakes that we make. As the system 2, we're trying to inform our system 1, right? That's the point of analysis. Okay. With that, that's kind of my big hand wavy thing, but we're gonna go into an example. This is just a random like overflow room I played. I mean, I have a whole video on like defensive situations, so this is just kind of me like doing pressure, like railing sub kids at gestures. Let's go. But I do still make some mistakes that I want to talk about. So yeah, here I just get something random and big. So I kind of just try and figure out any way to get down. And start to stack some more. This I didn't really like too much because I feel like I ignored that big gap on the side. And this I think was the biggest mistake I made, where I didn't count to 4 there. And then it kind of just spirals from there with like me covering garbage a ton. Again, I miss a count to 4. And then I cover the garbage, but it doesn't really matter because I'm playing against like 50 APM players. So, and I cover garbage again there. So yeah, if we were to watch that back, and I'll just go to the main mistake. I have a few more notes on like what I thought was bad, but this is the big one. Sorry, let me go a little farther back. Yeah, right here. So here, the easy way to count to 4 is just doing this double L pattern. But instead, I go for this. And then I'm unable to count to 4 with this. And I do this. And it just, doesn't end up good. And again, I cover the garbage. But because I know my own gameplay, and you guys might have caught wind of this from like how I was describing in like a lot of my examples, but I over attach to this chip tooth shape, or like this SLJZ pattern, instead of considering better options, because like this is such a good option in so many different situations. So yeah, but in this case, it was probably not the right thing. So I think especially with figuring out how to like count to 4 and like cleanly stack over, it's worth considering a little more instead of defaulting to patterns. I think I underweight counting to 4 when I'm trying to do pressure, instead of just like I'll just upstack a ton and do my like basic like upstack patterns, or like 6-3 spam, whatever. And also I like disregard garbage in pressure situations, like when I'm pressuring. That's what I've noticed in here. So that's like my examples of habits, right? This isn't me like going through and like looking at every situation. It's me like noticing when I make a mistake and trying to come up with like general catch-alls for mistakes. Again, I actually missed this LL again. So maybe like the double L, double J kind of thing. I think I also I typically don't like to use like 2 of the same piece in a pattern, because like it's a little bit of like 7-bag abuse habit, I think, where I'll try to like use patterns that like use up all of the bags so that like it's somewhat like consistent, that I'll have every piece. Or that's my theory behind it, right? It's a little bit of guesswork here, honestly, but yeah, so the main thing is that like you just need to find habits that work for you. This is also not super in-depth. Yeah, I don't really like doing like super in-depth analysis videos, but if there's like interest in them, I can try to do them. So yeah, another thing you can do is like look at higher level gameplay and kind of follow along with their decisions, and whenever something that doesn't really agree with what you would have done there comes up, you just kind of make a mental note of that, and then at the end of the replay you just start to think about, okay, like where, like why are they making this decision, why am I not making this decision, and doing the same kind of guesswork about like what about like what you can do to approach that like higher level of gameplay, and find habits that you can follow, or habits that you should remove from your gameplay to become better. So another thing is that habits are like these little like heuristic rules are going to help you make better use of your processing power, but not like create it from thin air, right? Like no amount of habits is going to like make you into like a bot that like, or like make you better than that bot that can iterate through all the solutions and like find the very best one. No, like no amount of these like simple rules is going to let you approach optimal gameplay. You eventually have to like resolve patterns and like do this process with like a huge quantity of patterns, and like, but you know, it helps amplify it and makes it easier, right? So yeah, and then finally, the goal is to move the identified habit that you get from system 2 to system 1. So for me, that would be like making better use of these LLs and like not latching so hard onto LS. So you still have to play more, you still have to practice, I'm sorry, but a good way to know when you've like really internalized the pattern is that you're not really consciously, or like a good way to know that you've stopped consciously thinking about it is you're not using any words in your brain anymore, right? So remember from the intro that the language part is going to be under system 2. System 2 processes language. So if you're still like thinking, oh, I don't need like don't latch on to the LS or whatever, and it's just like, okay, that's you're not you're still not thinking it fully with your intuition. That's all. Well, yeah, so let's get into the final caveats and discussion. I think this is a super little more heady than my previous one, but a little more along the lines of what the series title might suggest, so I don't feel too bad. So first, I think that habits might be too general a word for just intuition. Obviously, there's a lot of like conscious habits that you can make. So like this, like if you have a habit to, like a good habit to make a conscious decision before a big send, or like when it's kind of iffy, when you should attack or defend on a certain stack. So you kind of look at your opponent's board, you do some critical thinking, think about their habits, or like, you know, that kind of thing. It can also include someone's like perceived comfort zone. This is kind of something I didn't really know how to include, like someone's perceived comfort zone versus actual comfort zone, and I'll get into this a little bit later. Second is that like this might not even be super useful for a lot of people. I mean, it's applicable in other things like where the system 2 guides system 1. Like the Inner Game of Tennis, it also touches on this concept. It's a book about, you know, improving at tennis, but it's like a pretty solid book on like mental game and a lot of competitive activities. Also like a lot of sports as well, where there's a lot of, or fighting games where it's like there's a lot of like repeatable micro situations, like hitting a certain shot in tennis, or like a certain like spacing in a fighting game. Or I don't know how to talk about it in terms for people that might not have the background but that I do, but it's fine. Either way, I think the practical takeaway is to keep things simple. There's not really a way to like completely like focus or like isolate different things. It is kind of just like keeping it to these simple, kind of soft, ambiguous rules, but still good tenets, you know, like little mantras, as opposed to like hard and fast rules or lapping out situations. It's just, there's so much like complexity to how many different ways a Tetris board can be arranged, and the queue can be arranged, that like it's just hard. But it's fine. And finally, I think that I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't be able to confidently disagree if someone said that the processing power concept is a little bit of a stretch, right? It might be a little too simplified, like pushing speed versus pushing efficiency. I mean, there has to be like some difference, right? Because when you're pushing efficiency, you're like focusing on different things, and one way to push depth is also to just have more patterns, which can't do anything but like bog down your speed, where getting more speed is probably, it's good to just like consider less patterns, right? But either way, I still think it's like it's a good analogy, because I think too many people just worry about like the most optimal way to practice. Like, oh, it's like I should push speed first, I should push efficiency first. Just like push whichever one like is the most straightforward for you right now, right? Like if you can't get it, if you find it hard to like play outside of your comfort zone speed wise, it could be like a physical thing, right? Then like push the efficiency side. Like if you can't really like figure out like, or it's just mind numbing to like push your efficiency, and just push your speed, right? Like you'll get to there, you'll get to the place at the end. You'll get to your goal at the end no matter what, if you just keep practicing and don't like slump into like doing the same thing over and over again, even if it's like just staying within comfort. But yeah, and finally, like I think one of the ways that it might be like one counterexample you could raise to processing power is that like there are like really efficient players that feel like they can't play quickly regardless, and like keep up that same level of like performance. But I think there's a way to think about that. There's like a kind of a thing with slower players or like efficient players that they just don't have the habit of playing quickly. They're definitely able to play quickly, but like they just don't, right? Like they're not used to it. And one way, like a practice method that has worked for a few like efficient players that I've known, it's like Kirigo, BenNXT, and Circulation. They've like had periods where they just kind of did nothing but play fast modes or like tried to push speed as much as they could. I think worked out for most of them. I think Ben didn't do it for that long. Kirigo played sprint for a while, and you know Circu is now Circu. But yeah, I mean that's a topic for a different time. But you know, just discussion that I think is fairly related. But yeah, other than that, that's about it. I think this is probably a lot more than like pretty big concept. There's a lot of different ways to apply this, and I think that's just like it's just kind of the framework how I think about the game at a lower level, like at the level of like what you're actually doing. Could be useless. I think it's interesting. I mean, that's why I thought of it. But yeah, let me know what you all think. I'm probably going to be referring to this kind of concept in more of these. So I don't know. I guess thanks for watching, guys. See ya.